Mary from Brambleberry. Thanks so much for joining me today. Today I am going to be showing you how to make these gorgeous, beautiful clay soaps that are made with, wait for it, oat milk. That's right, we are using oat milk in these soaps. Never worked with milk and soap? Don't worry, we're going to show you how. So there's a few different ways to use milk in soap, and if you don't have my book on how to make milk soaps, I would recommend getting it because I go over every single technique in there. For today's recipe, we're going to be doing a traditional cold process soap, water discounting just a little bit, and then adding our oat milk at the very end to help preserve those beautiful ingredients so that way they don't get too impacted by the heat or the lye in the soap making process. We're also going to be using Brambleberry's Golden Oats Fragrance, which is, of course, warm, oaty, a little nutty, some vanilla notes, so many honey notes. It's gorgeous. It does discolor just a tinge, so we're going to be using titanium dioxide in the entire batch to help keep the entire batch more white. And then, just to add some interest, we're going to be adding heather flowers to the very top of this soap. They're gorgeous. They provide a really beautiful texture, and color scheme wise, they can't match more perfectly. So this recipe, well, it uses layers, and so it's not like a total beginner recipe, but you guys, this is pretty easy to make. So if you've only got a few batches under your belt, this would be a great one to do. First, I'm going to be adding titanium dioxide to the entire batch. Now, usually we'd pre-mix the titanium dioxide with a little bit of lightweight oil just to make sure that it was fully mixed in and mixed up. In this case, I'm adding it to the whole batch because I really want to help with that natural discoloration that happens from the fragrance oil. So now before we start working with the lye water, it's time to suit up for safety. You never get another pair of eyes. So these get really covered. And you know what? Gloves, long pants, closed-toed shoes, children and pets in the other area, well ventilated so you don't get any sort of lye fumes or anything like that. And then you are ready to go. I've had my fair share of accidental lye burns in the last 20 years. And you know what? They're not fun. So wear some gloves when you're making your soap. First things first, let's go ahead and add in our lye water that I've added some sodium lactate to already. The sodium lactate, remember, is the natural salt of lactic acid, and what it does is it helps make the soap harder faster, which is pretty important in this particular recipe because we're going to be sticking it in the freezer right away, which is going to make the soap softer longer. Now, like I mentioned, I did do a little water discounting already to make sure that when I added my oat milk at the end, I wasn't going to have too much liquids. So keep that in mind when you're prepping this recipe. So I'm at a really good trace here. This is, I would say, a light, it's kind of a medium. I just added all of my oat milk. I'm seeing a little bit of discoloration as those kind of protein and carbohydrate particles hit my lye, but we're doing okay. And now it's time to add my fragrance to the entire batch. I'm just hand whisking in because the second I separate this into 3 different batches and then start adding my clays, well, we're going to get just a little bit thicker more quickly. Now, of course, I added water to my clays already so that they wouldn't absorb nearly as much water in the soap, which will lead to a more even texture and less cracking. That was key, but they'll still make the soap get pretty thick pretty quickly. And this Golden Oats Fragrance from Brambleberry, perfection, acting so gloriously. Now, easy pour containers, I'm just going to go ahead and pour into them about evenly. I'm just eyeballing it, and then I will work on my colors one by one. So that gives me a little bit more time to work with the individual colors. I also want my first layers to be a little bit thicker so that the next layer will be able to suspend on top of it. And let's get a spatula so nothing gets wasted. Don't want to waste a precious drop of this soap. Gorgeous. It smells so good. I wish you could smell it. It is, it's like, I don't know, almost like it's toast with honey and butter. Oh, smells so good. Here we go. I am going to grab my tall silicone mold. This is nice and tall, so the bars end up looking like this. Love how this looks when it's cut. Have it ready. And now first, layer is my Brazilian purple clay. And I'm just gonna give this a really quick, just little stir just to make sure I'm fully mixed up here. Toss that in, getting all the last little bits of it. And now I have my clay, and I'm just gonna give it a really quick hand mix, and then I'm gonna put my stick blender in to ensure everything's fully incorporated. One of the things I noticed with the stick blender is because of its really high mixing ability, the shear factor, it does a better job kind of micronizing the colors in there and getting them even. And this is getting thick fast, which is good because I still need it to support that second layer, my white layer with titanium dioxide only. Oh, gorgeous, just gorgeous. So, now just pour gently and easily down the middle. And you're not going for perfect lines, so don't stress it if they're not perfect. And then I'm going to take try not to pour down the sides though, because if you pour down the sides, you end up with soap that is uneven and speckled on the sides, which is fine. I mean, it's soap, so no one really cares too much. But if you're going for those perfect lines, you want to stay away from the sides. So there we go. And now, do this. Just going to kind of tamp down. So pretty. So the next layer we're doing titanium dioxide, and this is titanium dioxide that's been mixed in lightweight oil. And I notice we're getting a little bit hard, which is totally to be expected. This has been sitting for a little bit of time. So I'm just going to give it a quick whisk. And then I'm gonna toss my stick blender in. Just make sure I'm fully mixed in here. Beautiful. That really helped with the texture and the color there. And here I'm gonna just pour gently and slowly down very close to the layer. One of the reasons I love these easy pour containers is because with the long spout, they allow you to pour low and slow. And the low and slow is pretty important when you're trying not to break through bleed with your layers. Because if I was pouring from really high, the soap almost acts like a needle and just kind of pierces that first layer. And I did not want to do that with this. So now, gently tap down. Gorgeous. Loving it. Okay. And now, final layer. This is the rose clay. It is a gorgeous, romantic rose clay. I'm going to give it a little whisk with this guy just to get this fully incorporated back in. Toss that whole thing in. And I see a little bit stayed in there, so I'm just going to put a little bit of my soap in there. Just mix that up. Get that last little bit out. I want all that rose clay. It's skin-loving goodness, and it's also important for my color. So mix all this in. And the soap has gotten a little thick. Don't you worry. It's all good. If you are used to working with a more thick trace soap, this won't stress you out at all. But if you're a brand new soaper and you're used to really thin traces, this might worry you. But once you add that water and once you kind of give a little bit of movement, that viscosity thins right out. It's completely pourable right now. I am going to put a little stick blend into this just to make sure we are fully mixed in color-wise. So gorgeous. So now I'm just going to, again, pour low and slow. I'm going to start from this side and pouring right down the middle, because once I tamp, it's going to go down the sides. So I don't need to worry too much about it. There we go. And gorgeous texture. Reminds me a little bit of kind of a more natural Neapolitan ice cream design almost. And I just love that these clays are so skin loving. And of course, as an homage to some oat milk, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to manipulate the top a little, give it some interest, give it some swirling. Let's see what we can do here. And then I'm going to do some oatmeal on the top and the heather flowers. So not just the heather flowers. And so let's just see what we can do for some interest in the design up top. And it's soap, so anything you do is completely correct and right. And like I said earlier, I'm definitely putting this right into the freezer because I don't want this to go through gel phase. Gel phase would potentially scorch my precious oat proteins that are in there from the Oatly oat milk. And just a word about that oat milk. I picked Oatly specifically because of the no added sugar or the least amount of added sugar. Whenever you're picking oat milk to be doing, think you want less additives, no carrageenan, no alginate, a little less sugar than you might see, because the sugars, interestingly enough, when they are mixed with lye and lye water and they get really hot, they can superheat up your soap. So they can turn the soap colors, but then they can also superheat up, which is something nobody wants. So now that this is in here, it's time to put this directly into the freezer. I'm gonna let this sit in the freezer for at least an hour. You can probably do up to 4 hours. My main thing I'm trying to do is just to stop that gel phase from happening. So we made this soap a full week ago, but we did put it right into the freezer, so that stopped gel phase. So this soap is just gonna be a little stickier than, say, soap that went through full gel phase, right? Because the gel phase is what evaporates that extra water that's in the soap. So we're a little gummy, little sticky, totally normal when you are doing soap and putting it directly into the freezer. We're still gonna give this a cut though, because how else can it evaporate the extra water out without us cutting it? So, because there's all these beautiful herbs on top, if I cut from the top down, it'll drag the herbs down. So that's why they're on the front, so they stay on the side. So if I was using like a multi-bar cutter, I'd be cutting this on the side as well. So non-serrated knife, not serrated, gently cutting straight down, keeping in mind that this is gonna be a little soft. That's to be expected. Gently, gently, gently wiggle up. You never want to pull because then you can tear the bar. No one wants torn soap bars. And then, whew, there we go. That's beautiful. One thing I'm noticing, just a little bit of discoloration here, and I'll be able to wash that off later, or I'll be able to just kind of wipe it off later. And that's because of the soft pink soap kind of just dragging a little bit right along into the white. Let's give this another cut. I'm really happy with how the layers turned out. They're so rustic and beautiful and muted pastels. All I see when I see in this is just Easter, Easter, Easter. So pretty. So these bars are like any other bar. Even though they didn't go through gel phase, they still need a full 4 to 6 weeks to cure to make them extra gentle, and of course to evaporate out that water that's making these bars just a little bit softer than we might like. Ooh, I love how they look. These are just such pretty colors. So 4 to 6 weeks of cure time, and then they're ready to package up, sell, or give away. Thanks so much for watching today's video. If you like it, give it a thumbs up below and subscribe to the channel so you are always notified every time we come out with videos. And remember, when you are making your products, we want to see them. So hashtag them, Bramble on, because we want to see your creativity and what you're making. Until next time, happy soaping. Your creativity and all your artistry. Okay. I was like artisan, artistry, artisan makings, yeah.